there's a lot more to the story here than just monetary policy. It's a very small piece. And so I think people need to really focus on the infrastructure that's being built, that's being proposed, what kind of new things people will be able to do that, and how we sort of take the whole interchain to the next stage. And issuance is sort of a minor piece. Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
So, hello and welcome to the very first interview here from the ground at Cosmoverse. I'm pleased that Ethan Buchman, the co-founder of Cosmos, is joining me today, and obviously we will talk about Atom 2.0 today. So, first of all, thank you for traveling all the way to Colombia.
Yeah, it's beautiful here.
Yeah. So you like it so far?
I'm happy here so far. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and yesterday a big announcement has been dropped, which was Atom 2.0. Many people are not here, many people couldn't make it, and maybe some people did not find the time yet to read the white paper.
Read the video,
and all of these things. So it would be cool if you could give us, first of all, a broad overview of everything. What is Atom 2.0?
Yeah, so I'll take a step back and sort of paint a little bit of a bigger picture, because I think there's more going on than just a new white paper, a new paper for the Cosmos Hub, and that's a big part of it. But what I was articulating yesterday in my talk was that I think broadly speaking, there are 3 big phases of the Cosmos project. This is this sort of new idea that I'm offering about where we're coming from and where we're going and what it's all for. And those phases I call initiation, integration, and illumination, right? And initiation phase sort of started with the initial Cosmos white paper in 2016, and I think this month, September 2022, marks this transition point between initiation and integration. And so the initiation phase was really about changing the landscape of blockchain design, giving birth to the Interchain, to this new approach to application-specific blockchain, sort of changing the way everyone thinks about building these kinds of systems, proving out Tendermint, the Cosmos SDK, and IBC, and the Cosmos Hub. But the Cosmos Hub, through initiation, was really more a prototype of what could be done, right? It was really trying to prove out this new model of building, operating, deploying highly decentralized blockchains. And so, we sort of talk about the Hub kind of lapsing into martyrdom during the period of initiation, where it was really trying to, support everything else, giving birth to the Interchain, to these ideas of sovereignty and interoperability, and not really prioritizing itself in any way, or really building any kind of meaningful internal application or product, right? So now we're moving into this integration phase. And there's a lot of different pieces to that. Some of what I talked about was the need for greater social coordination. So during the initiation phase, we had a tremendous decentralization of our development team, and during integration, we're thinking about figuring out how we all work together more in sort of more formal ways to collaborate and fund all these public goods. But another piece of the integration phase is the Cosmos Hub now saying, okay, we've given birth to this new world, the Interchain. Now's the time to start thinking about a new role for the Cosmos Hub to step up, not just as the birth giver to the Interchain, but as a leader within this Interchain that now exists. And so the new Cosmos Hub paper is an outline of a potential vision for where the Cosmos Hub could go, that really builds on the successes so far. And we can get into what's in there, but outlines a direction that has a new sort of secure economic scaling layer with interchain security and liquid staking, and then built on top of that these new sort of hub-specific features of the interchain scheduler and the interchain allocator that together are really designed to help grow the interchain overall and help it thrive. And so that's this sort of new role for the Cosmos Hub moving into this integration phase. And then the role will have to transform again as we get to illumination, and we'll have to keep updating. So this isn't definitely not the last word, and we've just offered an outline here for the community to consider and think about if it works for them or what needs to change and so on. So it's very much the start of an ongoing collaboration, we could say. Yeah.
Yes, I also read an article where you also mentioned that this is not a final version yet, so it's still up to the Atom holders
Absolutely.
to decide where the future is heading.
This is a very decentralized, very active, opinionated community, right? And a bunch of core contributors have gotten together and worked on articulating a new vision. And there's a lot of the pieces in there have been discussed in various ways in public, and it's sort of maybe not that surprising, all the different pieces, but we brought it together in a particular way and are sort of offering it as a starting point for discussions to figure out where we go from here. And there's still, it's just an outline of a new sets of infrastructure we can build for the Cosmos Hub to enable a growing, thriving interchain. And so we're all going to have to work together to actually implement any of it, and for it to be successful, the wider community is going to need to build on top of it and help make it a success. So yeah.
Yes, and I think that's also it's also very suitable for the spirit of the Interchain.
Yeah.
If we have seen all the governance proposals in the past couple of months, like governance proposal 69 or 72, there were so many discussions and so many different visions.
Very
together.
active governance forum.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to do it like this. But now let's dive deeper into what happened. So many people were like a little bit upset with the tokenomics of Atom. In the best periods of time, I think the inflation rate of Atom was 7%. But now Atom apparently becomes less inflationary. This is like what the new model aims to do. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this and also maybe highlight the transitional phase, which will take 36 months.
Yeah, so the important thing to understand is that initially when the Cosmos Hub was being designed and the first white paper was written, there was an understanding that there's this tension between liquidity and security in proof-of-stake networks, right? You need some significant amount of the token to be bonded to actually provide security for the chain, but that comes at the cost of liquidity because those tokens are now not available in the wider market. And so the idea to address that was to have an exponential issuance rate that could modulate that tension. And so if the amount staked went down below the target, the issuance rate could go up, and if it went above the target, the issuance rate could go down. And so on the Cosmos Hub today, we have there's a minimum of 7%, a maximum of 20%. Those are configurable parameters that can be voted on, and depending on how much is staked, it determines how the issuance rate is sort of moving. But what's the new world we're moving into with interchain security and with liquid staking starts to change the dynamics of that tension, right? So with interchain security, for the first time, we can have a development environment around the Cosmos Hub, so we can have new projects building, launching tokens or accumulating fees that can then be used to pay for security, with the staked atoms on the Cosmos Hub. And then additionally, with liquid staking, now suddenly you can still have your atoms staked and still use them in a liquid way throughout the rest of the interchain. And so, with those two things together, there's an expectation that more atoms are going to stay staked, and it will stay above the target ratio. And so that reduces the need for exponential issuance to incentivize staking to happen, because there's going to be other sources, other sources of incentives. And so the proposal in the paper is to say, okay, now that we'll be entering this new world where there's reduced need for exponential issuance to satisfy this sort of security liquidity trade-off. We can think about taking that down over time. And so the proposal in the paper, which again is up for the community to discuss and debate and adopt, is to move away from that. If we're above the target stake ratio, which is 2/3 of the atoms staked right now, and so if we're above that, say there's 80% staked or something like this, we can move away from exponential issuance to a more towards a steady state. And the proposal there is that over a 3-year period, it would start with an issuance model where 10 million atoms are issued a month, and it would drop off in an exponential way towards some steady state of 300,000 atoms a month, which is a nod to the speed of light at 300,000 meters per second. So that's the sort of idea, and again, that's probably something that will be hotly debated and discussed, and maybe people will want to preserve some amount of exponential issuance, 1% or something, or they'll want to go down to 0. And I mean, these are all less interesting, I think, than the actual infrastructure we're building and the communities we're building and the technology that's being built around it. I mean, issuance feels like a little bit of a minor point. I know people are kind of obsessed with it because of sound money memes and all this stuff. I think that's all a distraction from what we're trying to do. And I talked about this a little bit in my talk yesterday as well, that soundness is about building sustainable political economies, right? And issuance is a small piece of that. And so I think all this hyper focus on the issuance model is a little bit misplaced. I understand, it matters to people and there's memetics and stuff, but I'd like us to work on the more important things, let's say, than just hyper focusing on the issuance. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I remember your comparison with the burning fire in the dark
Yeah,
forest.
so the quote was, if some money burns down in the forest and no one's around, does that make it sound? And yeah, I think the answer is no. Money needs to be used, right? I mean, these are about enabling technologies for people to do new things and to express themselves. And we're moving into this world of community computing and changing the relationship between communities and their technology. Like, there's a lot more to the story here than just monetary policy. It's a very small piece. And so I think people need to really focus on the infrastructure that's being built, that's being proposed, what kind of new things people will be able to do that, and how we sort of take the whole interchain to the next stage. And issuance is sort of a minor piece. Yeah.
I tend to agree with that, but still I think also there's also part of the story that this monetary design also impacts the infrastructure, because now also validators, like we as a validator, we made a huge part of the revenue from the inflation that comes from Atom, and of course this also impacts us, which also could impact also the infrastructure. So I think everything comes together here, but I agree with your
So I think everyone's aware that issuance as a revenue model is not really sustainable in the long term. It's a useful bootstrapping mechanism, and so the community needs to get serious about what it means to move towards more sustainable sources. Interchain security provides a way to do that. By now we can spin up additional chains, and there can be other sources of revenue for the service, the security services being provided by validators and delegators and so on. And so as those revenues start to pick up, they can come to replace issuance. But again, there's a proposal in the paper, and it's up to the community to figure out the right way to either adapt that proposal or make a new one, or so this is sort of a opening move in a conversation about how things are going to change over time to build a more sustainable political economy around the Cosmos Hub. Yeah.
Yes, this would have been actually my next question, like in regards of interchain security. So it's basically interchain security, the aspect that tries to replace the huge inflation that we see in Atom right now.
I mean, the main idea behind interchain security is that we can, for the first time, extend the development environment of the Cosmos Hub, right? So, Prop 69 was a great example of how contentious putting new software on the Cosmos Hub can be, right? If you want that to be a really sound, really stable, place that it has very low surface area, low risk, low downtime, all these sorts of things, you'd be very careful with what kind of software gets put there. And if you want to extend the functionality of the Cosmos Hub, it's very, difficult to do that kind of directly. And so interchain security allows functionality to be extended in a very modular, sound sort of way using, traditional parallelization, modularization kind of techniques from software development, so that software can be written in a sort of independent way with an independent release process, and thereby it can actually really extend the functions of the Cosmos Hub, but it can also offer other applications a way to launch and leverage the security of the Cosmos Hub and so on. And that creates entire new marketplaces and landscapes and opportunities for the security of the Cosmos Hub to be used, and therefore derive sources of compensation for the security being offered beyond just issuance, but now coming from actual real sources of fees and issuance of other tokens that will start to change. And so it really opens up a whole new variety of opportunities, let's say, for the security providers on the Cosmos Hub to attract other sources of revenue.
Yeah, that's actually also very exciting now, because we see the first projects in the pipeline that will take advantage of that, i.e. Quicksilver, Neutron, and so on.
So there's going to be some big announcements tomorrow about the set of initial consumer chains that are coming up, and we've certainly seen a lot of demand for it, and we expect that will keep growing. So interchain security is really exciting that the hub is kind of extending its development ecosystem really for the first time in a really meaningful way, and so we're all excited about that.
Big news are about to be published tomorrow. But before we talk too much about this, what I think another interesting part of this is also MEV, because we see now Neutron, for example, is a very interesting blockchain that allows developers to deploy more smart contracts on it, which means more DeFi activity. Then we have Quicksilver also with liquid staking, also more capital efficiency. So then there is this aspect that also MEV will impact Atom 2.0 due to the interchain scheduler. So could you maybe bring this a little bit into perspective? How will MEV impact Atom's tokenomics? And besides, how big do you believe will MEV become in the interchain in the next few years?
Yeah, for sure. So, just to highlight again, the structure of the paper proposes, okay, we have a new secure economic scaling layer that's interchain security and liquid staking, right? And then on top of that, we're going to build these, or we propose that there be built these two new hub-specific features, the Interchain Scheduler and the Interchain Allocator, right? And the idea with the Interchain Scheduler is essentially to bring MEV, block space, marketplaces on chain, right? And starting with consumer chains. So with interchain security and with the launch of a number of consumer chains using the security of the Cosmos Hub, there will be, like you're saying, new sources of demand for block space and for ordering guarantees, and MEV is kind of everywhere now, and obviously huge in Ethereum, and it's coming to the Interchain. There was a talk earlier about it, right? So everyone is sort of looking at the demand for block space and ordering, and especially with more DeFi and all these opportunities coming. And so the idea behind the Interchain Scheduler is to bring that that MEV marketplace directly on chain onto the Cosmos Hub, or potentially even for it to be built as a consumer chain itself, to have the scheduler built as a consumer chain that allows other consumer chains to essentially offer some of their block space for sale on the scheduler, right? And so they can essentially issue a non-fungible reservation token that represents some block space in the future on some consumer chains, and then those tokens, which represent essentially interchain block space in the future, can then be auctioned off together to MEV service providers and other kinds of third parties that want to that want to purchase that future block space, and then do whatever they will with it, offer new kinds of guarantees or services to users and so on. So it's really a piece of infrastructure that will bring the MEV marketplace on chain, focused initially on the consumer chains and the ordering guarantees and sort of block space under the interchain security umbrella, but then can also expand out sort of down the road to the wider interchain and offer the scheduler services to more chains out there.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about MEV, and if you're just at the beginning of your MEV journey, I will link some videos with Sunny Agarwal and also with Skip and Mekatech into the description. This is, I believe, a very good way to start, but I think I get the point why MEV will also impact the tokenomics of Atom, but was the invention of the interchain scheduler, so to say, also because of maybe the fear of centralization, because you're basically opening the access to MEV. We have seen lots of lessons learned on Ethereum. MEV has been very centralized, only a couple of people took advantage of it. Some people are afraid that this might lead to centralization on Cosmos if MEV becomes bigger, and now you're basically opening the market, you are making it more accessible. So was this also part of the deal?
That's certainly part of it. I mean, one way of thinking about MEV is that the mempools of our blockchains are kind of underspecified, right? And it's not clear really what guarantees users can expect out of their mempools, out of transaction ordering, right? And that gives rise to these off-chain MEV markets and the kind of dark forest meme and all this sort of stuff. And yes, there's a lot of these MEV relayer networks that are focusing on bringing shining light in the dark forest and enabling stronger guarantees and stuff. But the idea is to essentially bring that directly on chain, and so that any fees that accrue from this block space marketplace accrue back into the Cosmos Hub's ecosystem and can be allocated into the allocator, sort of the other piece that's being proposed to sort of keep things cycling and help grow the sort of wider interchain, right? And so the scheduler kind of provides this new functionality that interchain secured chains can take advantage of to sort of support them and support their growth, that can then be recycled back into supporting the emergence of new chains that can then also feed back into the scheduler, and so you sort of get this cycle going that sort of benefits everyone. And really, the way I'm thinking about the Cosmos Hub kind of more broadly, and a big part of the integration phase and what we're trying to do is really understand the guarantees that these systems are providing. Everyone talks about security. You throw the word security around like you know what you're talking about, right? But it means so many different things to so many different people, and it's really difficult to get precise about economic security or decentralization security, censorship resistance. There's all these different aspects to it, and we do such a poor job in this space of really formally specifying what we're talking about and what kinds of guarantees we're offering and the invariants that we're trying to preserve, right? And one of the things we really focus on at our company, Informal Systems, is the kind of specification of the formal properties offered by these distributed systems protocols, which can be very difficult to actually pin down, right? And a lot of people think you understand in your head and whatever, and you just sort of gloss over it, but they're quite complicated, and you can learn a lot by simply trying to articulate the invariance, right? And moving into this MEV space, we can do a similar thing, and we'd like to see the Cosmos Hub be a leader in clearer articulation and specification of the invariance, of the guarantees that are being upheld, so that users can get a much stronger sense of what they can expect out of the system. And for instance, this was part of the design philosophy behind IBC, right? There's all these bridges out there, there's all these esoteric ad hoc ways to connect two blockchains together, and as a user, like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, right? And so the idea with IBC is like, all right, let's standardize this, let's have like a clear, definable security model, one way to reason about the thing, and use the same kind of system and architecture everywhere so that users kind of know more clearly what they're getting into and what's involved here. And so we would like to see the whole space kind of upgrade its approach to providing guarantees and specifying invariance ultimately for the benefit of user security and user understanding of the systems. But that's an easy thing to say. It's a much more difficult thing to actually work on doing. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and also with all the bridge hacks that we have experienced in the past.
You'd think people would be paying attention at this point. Yeah, formal verification, man.
But you mentioned the Interchain scheduler. So what is, the Interchain allocator.
The allocator, yeah.
Yeah, so what is the Interchain allocator?
Yeah, so the allocator is essentially a way to facilitate economic coordination between different chains in a more formal way, right? So right now you see a lot of new projects trying to align with the Atom and Cosmos Hub community by doing airdrops, right? And that's been really cool and interesting, but it sort of fizzles off, and it's maybe not a way to have sort of long-term incentive alignment. And so the idea behind the allocator is to have a few sets of simple tools. A few are proposed in the paper. One is called the covenants, and one is called the rebalancer, that allows, these are sort of simple primitives that allows others to build more complex kinds of relationships for incentive alignment, for economic coordination, capital allocation, liquidity provisioning, bootstrapping new chains, all these sorts of things, lining up with the Cosmos Hub and using these primitives, right? And so the idea ultimately is that fees accrued through the block space market of the Interchain scheduler can sort of feed back into the allocator. So there's new kind of treasury that the allocator, a piece of the allocator can manage that can then be deployed into these sort of agreements or incentive aligned relationships with other chains, other tokens to provide liquidity and AMMs together, and then to rebalance portfolios or things like that. So it's really just like a base set of primitives that allows others to build a lot more complex kinds of relationships between chains, and sort of more things flowing over IBC, allowing more information to flow, and more economic alignment essentially, right? So you can think of this as like ways to build like trade agreements between countries, right? Doing that sort of on chains and having some primitives that allow them to actually stitch things together in more complex ways. So the allocator opens up a quite vast design space, and you can build a small set of simple tools where you allow chains to lock up funds in one way or another according to certain parameters, and if other chains sort of agree with those parameters, then they can lock up funds as well, and then they can be sort of locked together and deployed in particular ways and rebalanced. And so with a few simple primitives, you can start to build very complex kinds of relationships between chains and sort of move everything forward. So I expect there'll be a lot of excitement around what kinds of things people will start to think about building with the allocator, and maybe we'll start to see some hackathons and stuff playing with it. So yeah.
That's very fascinating because you are leveraging IBC heavily here.
Oh yeah,
and
all of this is about leveraging IBC. I mean, Interchain security is built over IBC. The schedulers are going over IBC. I mean, it's all about things moving IBC over. I mean, IBC is general purpose, internet protocol essentially for communication between arbitrary state machines, right? And we really feel like we're building a new kind of internet here. One that's a little bit, more generic than the current internet we have, and hopefully designed a little bit better with, more security properties built in and stuff. But again, we need to do a better job of specifying those security properties, right? And so the more we can build on top of IBC, I mean, frankly, I still don't think the blockchain ecosystem has quite understood the power and generality of IBC. They still think of it as like, oh, this is Cosmos's token bridging technology. Like, no, that's like calling the internet email. It's so much more than that. And so the hub is really in a unique position to sort of lead the way in building out new features and new kinds of functionality that can be leveraged over IBC, and both the scheduler and the allocator, and of course Interchain security and even liquid staking are sort of ways to kind of demonstrate that. So yeah.
Yeah, but even like I agree with all of that. But for me, like the aspect of IBC and interchain security feels like an in-house design to onboard more Cosmos chain, to onboard more Cosmos chains. But the interchain scheduler feels more like that we can also bring IBC like really outside of the Cosmos. So we saw the first developments with Near now, so also IBC is coming to Near. So is the interchain scheduler like really like bringing this the allocator, sorry. The allocator, is the allocator bringing, or is the allocator aiming to bringing IBC like outside of Cosmos? So is here the focus on?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, it could be used for anything. I mean, it's up to the sort of the governance communities that bootstrap the allocator to determine which chains are important to align with, and that could be they could allocate funding towards other chains that are currently outside the Cosmos ecosystem to come in and adopt IBC and so on. I think that would be a great use case. It's ultimately up to the community how they want to use this new infrastructure. But I think you're right. We are seeing more and more sort of non-Cosmos chains starting to recognize the power of IBC and want to adopt it. And I certainly always chide Ethereum about hey guys, just like adopt IBC. Like we want you to keep your sovereignty. Just like say hi in a language we all understand. And then we can play together and stuff. So one day.
Yeah, would be very wonderful.
Yeah.
Composable is working on something.
Sure.
That's what I can say. But last but not least, what is the governance stack?
The governance stack, yeah. So there's a whole section in the paper talking about governance and the sort of changes necessary for governance. And right now we have a pretty primitive, kind of clumsy governance system. It's amazing how active everyone is. But we just have like a standard type. Everything takes 2 weeks, and it's difficult to sort of build alignment and stuff. And so the idea is to have a more nuanced and more representative kind of governance system that allows new kinds of councils to form to govern different aspects of the stack. And to leverage the new treasury to deploy in particular ways, and starting to better synchronize the kind of off-chain governance and strategy that's happening around the open source public goods and the on-chain governance, and so having more things be able to move on-chain, and have the Cosmos Hub be able to take a larger role in directly strategizing and funding public goods and connecting with other chains that sort of depend on that. And so again, that's a piece where I think a lot more detail needs to be fleshed out. I think proof of stake is also a stepping stone and is the sort of start of a conversation about much more complex kinds of governance systems. And proof of stake is certainly not the final word on how we're going to govern these systems. I think it leaves a lot wanting. And obviously, people have been raising concerns about centralization issues in proof of stake and all these sorts of things, and lack of stakeholder representation. I mean, if it's just staked coins that gives you power, there's obviously problems with that, and so we need to find other ways to represent key stakeholders in the ecosystem that maybe don't have as much bonded stake or whatever the case may be. And so the new governance stack is about starting to explore ways to do that. That's ultimately at the end of the day governed by the staked atom, but provides ways for sort of more agility, more flexibility, more autonomy, to be more responsive and adaptive, but still sort of grounded in an accountability framing. And we've been doing also at Informal, we've been developing this language for accountability, for talking about accountability and about promise making, and it's working really well inside the organization. We use it to structure our work and understand our sort of shared expectations and stuff. And I would love to see that language. We call it workflow. We have a guide, workflow.informal.systems. Really amazing. I highly recommend it. We'd love to see more of that be able to be leveraged on chain so that we can have sort of much more mature, much more professionalized accountability systems for building out all these public goods together and talking about what needs to be done and so on. So that's sort of the direction we're hoping to go with the governance stack. But again, we expect these will all be, every aspect of this is going to be, there'll be lots of opinions and lots of debate. And so we're looking forward to the whole community sort of getting together and, tearing through the paper and figuring out, what works, what doesn't, what needs to change. So it's an exciting time. Yeah.
Speaking of that, you mentioned it a couple of times. This is not a final thing here. So the community can come together and vote on, for example, certain governance proposals, and there's still some room for discussion. So what is a very good way to get involved to shape the future of the Cosmos?
Yeah, I mean the paper was posted on the forum, on the Cosmos forum. That's a great place to start. Discussions will probably, the more technical discussions will likely move on to GitHub, and there'll be lots of architectural work to be done there on all these pieces. So yeah, obviously people love talking about these things on Twitter and going through the paper and writing threads about all the things they like or don't like. So there's lots of ways to engage. There's a very active Cosmos community on Twitter, on the forums, on GitHub. There's the Discord channels as well. So there's a lot of great places to participate and get involved, and we'd love to have more people in it. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, and of course you can find the necessary links in the description below. Ethan, thank you so much
Awesome.
for
Great
taking
to be here.
the time.
Yeah, you got it.
And happy to have you in Colombia, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.